Today we are taking a look at exactly how my hypnotherapy process has helped 4 of my clients, who we're going to meet in a moment, to be able to beat anxiety and get free of things like panic attacks, feeling not good enough, negative thinking, irrational fears, and of course all of the physical symptoms of anxiety, like, that knot in your stomach or that tight feeling in your chest. And I think it's fair to say that when they first came to see me, they were all feeling pretty stuck. I mostly wasn't the first therapist they'd seen, and the results they got with other more traditional therapies like CBT, they just hadn't really lasted, and they were looking for something a bit more permanent. And I guess that they also wanted to be able to achieve some of their potential and to take some of the opportunities that were already in front of them, like being able to play with their kids and feel totally present, or accept social and travel invitations rather than making excuses and just feeling lonely and isolated. And I was able to help them with these things by focusing on just 4 things. Because in my experience, there are only 4 things that are underneath anxiety. And they are limiting beliefs, they are internal conflict, negative mental imagery, and past trauma. Now, by focusing on these 4 things, it's possible to not just manage anxiety, but to actually overcome it, because we can get to the root of the problem, rather than focusing on coping skills like breathing exercises or distraction, like a lot of talk therapies suggest. And having worked one-to-one with more than 1,000 clients in my capacity as a clinical hypnotherapist, I can say for sure that these coping skills are only useful until there's some kind of major life event, like maybe a relationship comes to an end or someone close to you passes away. They're not a real solution because they don't get to the root of the problem. However, my hypnotherapy process does. So in a moment, I'm going to share my screen with you so we can take a look at a couple of videos of these clients who are going to share with you their experience of fixing these 4 problems. I'm also going to explain to you a little bit more about how each one of these problems works as we go through, so that you can begin to recognize which ones you might have and what changes might need to happen in your mind for you to be able to put anxiety in the past and to lead the life that you're capable of. And you may be interested to know that one of these clients in particular didn't feel hypnotized during the session, but it still worked perfectly. So if you're the kind of person who thinks, I don't think it would work for me because I probably couldn't be hypnotized, then you might find this very interesting. So this first client, we healed up a trauma in her past. And it wasn't a big trauma, at least not in the sense that most people think about trauma. It wasn't, something like a sexual assault. It was the kind of thing that might happen to anyone. And most people wouldn't struggle with it. But just because of the peculiarities of her own neurology, she's unique, just like we all are. She was traumatized by it. It can happen to anyone, and the effect of healing it is very dramatic, as you can see.
I felt very stressed out of nothing. I can feel like, I can't find space where I can actually just, settle. And then suddenly I started having the panic attacks where I couldn't breathe. I was having this kind of, it was just out of a sudden, and I have never experienced such things before. I think it was right after the session, and the day after I came to see you, and on the other day I had to actually fly to Bulgaria again. And I kind of felt so at peace, and I have never felt like this for the past few months. And as I said in the beginning, I was feeling so restless and so much under pressure, and I had the problems with the breathing, and then suddenly I kind of felt so relieved, so free and at peace with myself, and I felt like, oh my gosh, it's like. It felt it was such a change, and I also felt that.
So with Andy, it was a belief along the lines of I'm not good enough that was creating a lot of his social anxiety and the feelings of inferiority. He'd done CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but it had only given him coping strategies which were working for him to some degree, but it was constant effort and it was a pretty precarious situation. He wanted something more permanent. Now, this sort of belief of I'm not good enough is the kind of thing that maybe, consciously it isn't true. but then there's a sense in which you, at some deeper level, feel that it is true. And every time something happens which seems to contradict it, a voice comes into your head and says, well, hang on, because something's going to happen at any moment to show you that you are, in fact, not good enough. And then you start filtering the world, looking for all the ways in which you're not good enough. So we used a process called time frame to remove this limiting belief at the deeper level. Let's see what kind of effect it had for Andy.
Make that decision. So I would suggest that maybe a year ago I wouldn't have applied for the role that I've now got, because I would have gone to that nth degree of, well, I'm never going to get it, so why would I even bother applying? Whereas the work we've done has put me into a space of, well, I will apply and I might get it. And actually, by having that positive intent as a starter for 10 rather than a negative intent as a starter for 10, that's got to end more positively. If you're in that space of I'm going to apply, whereas there's no point, well, it's got to end well. And I've had a couple of interviews since I've worked with you, and they obviously not all of them have worked out. But what I found interesting is that didn't close me down. Whereas I think again a year ago I would have taken that very personally, and that probably would have stopped me dead in my tracks.
Now, Lauren had a part of her mind that was making her suffer. And I think the term part is a good way to talk about what's going on here. Because most people sort of know what a part is already. It's like there's a part of you that wants more friends, but a part of you is afraid of rejection, for example. Or sometimes it seems like there's a part of you sabotaging what you're trying to do. And that's not a million miles from the truth, by the way. Or a part that's just skeptical and super critical. It can seem like what you need to do is turn down the voice inside that's judging and critical, so you can really tune into the more positive voice that tells you, well, just go for it, take the risk and find out. Now, I helped Lauren to heal up a conflict between two parts which were at war, and she describes, well, very vividly and beautifully her experience here.
I feel like also not so scared, and I feel like potential, but not in the way that I felt like before when we were talking about, like, I don't feel like just like this potential where I could just like do all kinds of destructive things to see what happens. I feel like I have the potential in order to attain the things that I actually want, rather than just like blind potential. The biggest difference is that right now I don't feel so conflicted. I don't feel like I'm being pulled in a million directions by things outside of me or things inside of me. I sort of just feel like everything's fine and I can still get the things that I want. It seems like what causes the pain, like in any sense, is when like cartoon characters are fighting and they end up in like a big ball of smoke and it's sort of going all over the place. It sort of feels like pain happens because of that. So there can be like parts of me that are like rolling around in like a ball everywhere, like kicking out in directions, and that causes pain, I feel like I have one practical, evidence-based understanding of like, before this, I kind of felt really shitty about a lot of things, and now I feel pretty fine with it, and the resolution of that came from a unification of conflicting brain parts or conflicting like mind parts.
And this is Annabelle, who is very good at creating pictures in her mind. Unfortunately, she was creating a lot of pictures that were giving her panic attacks, so her world was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I taught Annabelle to make changes to some of those mental images, and you can see what a difference that made for her.
I slowly started to stop even going out of my house sometimes. I've sort of built up things where I'm happy again, but I was still stopping myself from going to dinner parties, from just going on the tube or a bus or anything like that was travelling and that I wasn't in control of, really, I suppose. And this today I've arrived by tube, and I've been to many. I feel much happier about dinner parties. I don't know what was going on there, but I wouldn't even answer the telephone in case somebody was asking us out. And now it's really great. I'm excited about going to people's houses, and I'm excited about, getting on the tube and being normal and going to, have a sort of better life, like not so anxious all the time about situations. And I just feel nothing. I don't feel excited or scared or whatever. I just feel normal.
So, having heard these stories, maybe you're starting to think, I wonder if this could work for me. Well, what I want you to do is click on the link or the button under this video, head over to my website and fix up a time so that we can have a chat on the phone. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions just to understand whether my hypnotherapy process is right for you. Now, don't worry, they're not deep emotional questions, so if you need to pop into a meeting room at work or have a chat as you're walking down the street, that's fine. And we can talk to you or work with you in the evenings and at the weekends as well, so you don't need to worry about taking time off work for this. In fact, we can even work with you over a video call. So if you know that you're not going to be able to make it into the clinic, that's not a problem either. These techniques work incredibly well over Skype as well as face-to-face. So whether it's panic attacks or a phobia, or that you have negative thinking, there's a voice that sort of nags at you and makes you feel inferior, not good enough, or you immediately jump to the worst case scenario. Maybe you're worrying about your health or your family, or stressing about a job or a relationship or the lack of one. However it is that you experience your anxiety, well, there's a very good chance that my hypnotherapy process will help you enormously, just like you saw it helped the 4 clients that we met a little bit earlier. Now, of course you can continue trawling through the internet looking for self-help anxiety management techniques, but that's not a way to be free of anxiety. Now, you might get it under control for a while, but if you want to lead a normal life, where you're not making excuses or planning around your anxiety, then you're going to need to do something a bit more proactive, which starts by clicking on the link or the button and heading over to my website to set up that call. Because when you do, well, you can live in a life where your mind isn't getting in the way all the time, where you can look forward to things again without worrying that it'll end in disaster or that your anxiety is just going to wreck it for you. That might mean fixing up or getting into a relationship. Maybe it would mean getting rid of panic attacks so that you can travel and be ambitious. Maybe it means getting rid of those worries about your health so that you can put an end to immediately jumping to the conclusion that it must be something really serious every time, like, the C word. I don't know what it is for you, but I do know that beating anxiety means that you can be free to live the life that you deserve, because you don't deserve anxiety. Nobody deserves that. And you don't need to accept it as a limitation in your life. So click on the link or the button underneath, head over to my website, set up that time. Let's have a chat and figure out what we need to do to get you out of this anxiety.